All right, all right. It is Friday, and here we go. We've got a big group waiting for you, sir. Got a big group. I see them all rushing in the doorway. Look at that. Get a few more people in
Great.
here before I say good morning, good afternoon, good day to everybody. Oh, they just every time I say admit, there's just a whole bunch more that go, no, wait, 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 hold the door. We should all be so lucky. Look at that. Oh my goodness, there's more people, more people, more people. So we'll give people a chance to come on in, and thank you for being here. And we even have people on camera today. My goodness, this is a rarity. This is a rarity, but everybody is certainly invited to be on camera. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion later. We will be a relatively small group, and we're always a friendly group, so you'll have the opportunity even always to use the chat. It's always free of charge. Chat as much as you want to, but we'll also have the opportunity to unmute ourselves and speak our questions if that is easier for people. So I think we've got the first batch all safely pulled in here into the door. So I'm just going to take a few moments because I know I am not the reason you came here today, but I do have to thank a few people and make a few announcements before we get started. So thank you again for coming to today's Free Friday webinar here at USDLA. We're always happy to see people. I see some familiar faces. I see a few new faces. We always love that as well. My name is Valerie. I am on the board. I'm a past president at USDLA. And if you have any questions about the association, feel free to hang out at the end and I'll be happy to answer them. For today, you all are here to see Dr. Frederick Wehrle, and I was so happy. He was here a couple of years ago. I was talking to him before we got started. He was here a couple of years ago for National Distance Learning Week, and I've been sort of following him online, and I was just like, oh, he's got to come back. He's got to come back. And clearly I was right because look how many eager faces we have here today. So I'm going to turn things over to him in just a moment. But in the coming weeks, just want to mention we do have some other speakers coming up. We have our friend from the Texas Distance Learning Association. And she's going to be joining to talk about the metaverse. She's out of Houston, the University of Houston. And so come back for that. We also have some upcoming sessions about neurodivergence and proctoring. That I think is going to be very interesting for some of you who do have that as an issue, getting people to turn cameras on, and particularly when you're dealing with students with different abilities and different preferences. Want to remind you that you can go and watch many of our previous webinars. If you missed those, you can go and watch a number of them over at usdla.tv. That's our YouTube channel. Some of them, however, some of the content is in the member archive. So some videos, such as if you missed last week's, sorry. Last week we talked about from the University of Central Oklahoma. They came in and talked about how they built out their accessibility program. Really interesting session. That one is available in the member archive along with a lot of other content. A couple of dates that you would want to put on your calendar. I mentioned earlier National Distance Learning Week. This year, it is November 3rd through 7th. Full week of free programming. There's 2 to 3 sessions a day. So the schedule for that will be on the website, I think this coming week, if not very, very shortly. And also we'll be talking about that in the newsletter, which I know is how many of you arrived here today. If your institution, by the way, if your institution has a National Distance Learning Week program, I know many of them do. If you let me or someone here at the association know, we'll also add that. We'll add that link to the website so that others know what everyone else is doing, and you can check that out. Also, in January, can't believe it's so close. In January, we have Public Policy Week, so you want to mark those dates on your calendar as well. Finally, next June, if you can come, we would love to have you come in person or attend the virtual part of our national conference. So in person, we will be there June 22nd to 25th in Cleveland, Ohio. First time the association has been there, but we do have a very active Ohio state chapter. And so we wanted to go and hang out with them for a little bit. So that'll be cool. The call for proposals and the call for awards has just they're like opening, like call for proposals. The link you can go to the awards, I think, is still, you might have to wait a couple more days for that link to be active on the website. But we do have a whole host of new categories this year for the awards, so you would want to go and check that out. You can already see the rubrics and expectations and all of that on the website. And also, likewise, with the speakers for the conference, we have some new categories this year. Every year we try to bring in some new things. Every year we listen to all of you about what you want, what you don't want. We'll be leaning very heavily into lots of hands-on things this year in different ways. Some will be workshops, some will be chances to do kind of walkthroughs or demos. We have lots of different options. So stay tuned and check that out. And again, ask any questions you want to. We love questions. Again, member participation matters. Events like today and all of our events are possible through our member support, as well as the support of our many sponsors. For those items, particularly conference and awards, I should mention as well, if you're a member, you get a discount on your submissions and fees and things like that. So another reason to be a member. And now we're going to let a few more people in. My goodness, kept them waiting. That was very rude of me. So do want to thank our sponsors very quickly. Our platinum, gold, and silver sponsors are on the screen. Again, we wouldn't be able to offer all of this free content if we didn't have support from groups like this. If you see someone on the screen you work with, please reach out to your rep and say hello, say thank you, find out what's coming down the pipe, tell them what you would like to see coming. They love that. They love feedback from all of you. And likewise, we have a whole host of bronze sponsors, exhibitors, and friends. And if you take a look at this, there might be some names that you're not familiar with. Please take an opportunity to go and check out who they are. These names run the full gamut of hardware, software, services, pretty much anything and everything you could think of that you would need to be helping your learners at a distance, whoever your learners are, because we do have people, I get this question sometimes, are you just higher education? No, we have constituents here at the association from everywhere. From, as I said one day in a meeting, I said cradle to gray. They thought I said grave, but I did not. I said gray. So any aspects, K-12, higher ed, telehealth, government, workforce, you name it, we do have people here at the association that are involved in those spaces. So that's enough of the infomercialing. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And oh my goodness, look at this amazing audience we have today. I know you're going to have a great discussion, Frederick. You're going to have just so much. But I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm going to turn things over to you now.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be back, and I remember last time I really enjoyed the discussion, so I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, as you mentioned, actually, if people feel they want to show up on camera, that is much appreciated because then I can read the room a little better. But you might have questions that you can evidently either put in the chat or maybe just actually speak up. Because I'm not sure how well I'll be able to monitor the chat. Maybe Valerie can help me out a little bit, just in case I miss something. I have spent a lot of time, for those who know me, experimenting with generative AI and how we can use this for course content generation and to enhance courses. And this is quite exciting, actually, for me to share my current state of experimentation with you, because this is actually going to be as far as I know, world premiere of a new format of education that might be quite interesting to all of you. I am much more of an experimenter than I am a talker or presenter. In that sense, I have made only very few slides, and I'm hoping that the gods of the demo will be with me today so that I can demo all the stuff that I've been doing. Okay, well, let me jump in and share my screen. There we go. Oh. So what I'm going to premiere today for you all is what I call, and I don't know if that name is going to stick, but what I call a generative course. So the idea is we have been investing and working on online courses for quite a while, but they are facing some systemic, fundamental issues that will make them a big question mark in terms of investment, and is actually putting in question whether or not we'll be able to continue using online courses the way we have envisioned them so far. The larger picture, and I don't want to go too far off the rails here, but the larger picture is that somewhere in the 2030s, we might actually hit a world of abundance, meaning when artificial general intelligence, AGI, runs on quantum computers that are powered by fusion energy, automation of really most tasks will theoretically enable us to provide for the basic needs of every human, while, and that's the kicker, doing most of the work. So we have abundance of energy, we have abundance of capabilities, and everything we need to advance our society in a way that will allow us to effectively shift our need for learning for survival, for those that are in jobs that really allow them just to live, or learning for thriving for the few privileged ones that have the opportunity to effectively in an environment of scarcity use education to get ahead in front of others, into a situation where we probably will be learning mostly to enjoy life. The point is the abundance makes the entire construct of our society very different from the construct that most societies have, which is based on scarcity. And think about it for just a second. How much of the learning that we actually do is driven by an environment of scarcity and a scarcity of resources? And then think the scarcity scenario away and think about a scenario of abundance and what that means. So it's actually quite interesting to consider the scenario, and it's not fiction. We do have certain pockets of populations across the globe where we're quite close to a situation like this. And it's fascinating to actually observe how learning happens there and how teaching and pedagogy is structured there. So I'm taking just one example of Emiratis, nationals in the UAE, which technically have all their basic needs met and have now more than 2 generations of youth that are growing up in an environment where they don't have to care about the basics. They don't have to really worry about the future. They learn for something different. And that's actually quite interesting to consider for what they learn and how they grow. And we have a few other pockets around the globe where certain parts of the society are in similar situations and where education is starting to adapt or has adapted already. So we might be able to scale this to larger parts of the population. Now, the interesting perspective here and the main point for me is until we are there, everything will change constantly. The rate of change and technological development is huge, and we will be trying to catch up on the newest developments constantly. So I'm just giving an example based on my field of expertise in marketing. If I look at the rate of development here, in 23 with the first generative AI tools, AI-assisted emailing, for example, was a hot topic. And then in 24, AI-assisted search engine optimization or search engine management was a hot topic. Now in 25, we're already moving away from assisted to automated and personalized customer relationship management. That's through the phone, that's through chats, that's through managing entire campaigns. The key here is that they are already managed by, not just assisting a human. And this is what is being worked on. And you have also AI-powered graphic and video advertising that is being worked on. So it's not a creative necessarily who is just being assisted by, but we're working towards systems where the advertising and so on is automated as much as possible with as little human in the loop as possible. Next year, we're looking at marketing companies or agencies investing into the development of on-the-fly generation of personalized ads. And what that means is you can imagine algorithms following everything you do. And the ad that you will see in your social media feed, for example, being generated just moments before you see it, specifically for you in that very moment on that specific content. And then even bigger of a change is the rise of M2M, machine-to-machine marketing, where many people are starting to use agents to do their shopping for them. And what that means for marketing is evidently now you're not marketing to humans, you're marketing to a machine. So the entire structure and existence and purpose of a large part of marketing is changing because it's shifting towards a machine-to-machine interaction, which then ultimately, probably starting in 27, will start culminating in the do-it-for-me economy that is going to develop massively then, or starting then, which effectively means that most of the marketing will be done in a way where the consumer is not the one buying, if you want, in general. They will always delegate to machines to do it for them. And so effectively, the marketing structure will completely change. What does this mean for instructional design? Now is the interesting perspective. So for a course on marketing, or marketing courses, or marketing masters, let's say this, I might have in 23 still asked faculty to upskill and stay ahead of the stuff and make some updates to their course, right? Last year, many already figured out that the faculty might not be able to do this, and so they or the faculty tried to find subject matter experts that were able to provide these latest updates and this latest expertise that you don't have as a teaching instructor, for example. This year, institutions have already started to bring in subject matter experts from different disciplines to redesign whole courses because they are not up to date anymore, and there's no way one subject matter expert is even enough to bring all the expertise. Next year, we're starting to look at institutions having to bring together multidisciplinary teams to redesign whole programs. As soon as we start thinking about machine-to-machine marketing, most of the curriculum is not anywhere relevant. And then starting 27, we will have the first institutions probably think about merging marketing under computer science as a discipline, or at least parts of it, because most of the activities within marketing in the future will be done by engineers more than by creatives, for example, or pure business people. This is a timeline for institutions that are really on top of it. But the point is to demonstrate that in this, as well as many other disciplines, if you follow what is happening in industry and in tech, we realize how dramatically and constantly on an ongoing basis the content will have to evolve and courses will have to evolve. So I asked my friend GPT-5 to help me create a little graph that I would love to walk through to think about the hypothetical annual cash flow for an online course that we produced in 2015, or any one of us would have produced in 2015 in an academic institution. With the question for next year, what do we do with this course, knowing that things are going to change dramatically on an ongoing basis with the accelerated tech development? Do we want to invest in this course, or do we want to harvest this course? So if we look at this graph, and I hope everybody can see it all right. So we started with a negative 150K investment into this course, but we're a good brand. We enroll 100 students right out of the gate into the course per year, runs 4 times a year. And so we bring in effectively 100K every year with minus $1,000 maybe updates that we do every year, and then every 5 years we pay 5,000 to make a little bit more of a bigger update. So on a classic structure without counting for the compensation of instructors and admin overhead. These online courses evidently were built because they are relatively high margin products and they require relatively little maintenance, and the maintenance is relatively affordable. And with this model, you make that big investment, but you're getting quite a bit back relatively quickly if you do it right or if you have the brand that already attracts, or you do the marketing right. The key point here is, if we anticipate now that there's going to be so much change, and I'm taking a marketing strategy course here, for example, course that I've taught, I would anticipate a major redesign in the around 50K probably next year for that course, at least, bringing in subject matter experts and so on and so forth. But then the more difficult thing is going forward with all these changes that are happening. I can anticipate that I will probably be investing more than 50, maybe up to 100K actually, if I do 2 updates per year, if the speed of development is fast enough to keep the course up to date. The question is, why would I keep the course up to date beyond the principle of having to teach something that is up to date to the students? The main reason why I have to do this is because if I don't, my course that was an asset becomes a liability. And this is actually the biggest change that is happening as we speak this year and next year, is that for most institutions that have created asynchronous online courses, all of these courses, because of the quick change in technology, both content-wise in terms of what's happening in the application, but also in terms of how we teach, these courses are becoming liabilities. And I'm thinking about giants out there, like platforms like Coursera and so on, with 21,000 courses that were assets to them, that were very expensive to produce, and then basically in a few months are becoming gigantic liabilities, meaning they all need to be updated, not just once, but constantly for the foreseeable future for a lot of money. So if you're in this scenario, you can decide, okay, well, we need to do the right thing and we are going to invest the money. And chances are that if you do that, you'll end up something like this blue line and blowing all your margins or all your cash that you have on those updates on an ongoing basis. So, and if you don't spend it all, certainly your margins will be highly impacted. So there's a true decision to make here. And it's a yes and situation where probably a lot of institutions will require anyone in charge to do portfolio management and decide which are the courses that are worth investing in and which are the courses that we harvest off. And harvesting means, and harvest strategy is, we stop all investment into that asset and we let it run its course. So we let the enrollments do whatever they want. And as soon as it drops beyond a certain threshold, we'll actually discontinue it. And this is kind of the second curve that you see here. I don't do the investment in 26. The course is out of date. Word of mouth goes around. Less and less people enroll, and the cash flow drops off dramatically. And then I basically close that course. The same thing is true for entire programs effectively. Now, the question for me is there a way we can actually leverage AI to find a third option, which is evolve to a generative course? The idea is, here we have our online course, and we decide to make an investment next year to transform the course in a way that most of the things that are the liabilities, which is the static content, become dynamic and therefore update themselves constantly without me having to manually, using the traditional methods, keep everything up to date. If I'm able to use generative AI to have a course where major parts are generated right there and then when the student uses them, then I can actually escape these two first scenarios, and except for having to pay for the token usage that my models are using to generate the course content, I'll be able to kind of revert to a cash flow that is positive, potentially a little bit lower, but definitely in the back into the profitable direction. So what is a generative course? So a standard online course, you know, the learning experience is relatively, there's general content, it's static. The assignments and the learning activities are static and the interactivity is limited. And we have relatively little time with instructors in small groups or office hours. The initial cost, evidently, of a subject matter expert is relatively high to create all content, assignments, assessments, rubrics, and so on. The instructional designer has to guide the subject matter expert and design the learning experience, which all takes a lot of time beyond the cost of paying the people and the technology. And then, as we said, on an ongoing basis now, we are facing this need to redesign more fundamentally the courses much more frequently going forward with these people involved. The generative course changes the learning experience fundamentally, where it allows to use generative AI to create personalized, interactive content, assignments, and learning activities. And by doing so, free up time from instructors so that they can actually spend more time with the students in small groups and their office hours and so on. So it's not a situation where we're replacing instructors, we're reallocating time in a way that allows them to actually do what most students are looking for, which is that having that connection with instructors. The initial cost is similar. So I have subject matter experts who have to review all the content and assignments and so on and so forth, but they have to review it only, right? They're not creating, which is excessively faster. I have colleagues who have tested this actually with courses at Bellevue University, and they are able to review an entire course within a week, for example, by a subject matter expert. And then you have the instructional designers to manage the course generation with generative AI and support the subject matter expert, which is also much lighter on the workload than having to do the dance that we usually do with faculty. And then on an ongoing perspective for the maintenance, the subject matter expert needs to review, annotate, and help through annotation effectively the AI to become better and better. So we're at the beginning having to spend a little more on the maintenance, but as subject matter experts help refine the generation and the output of the models, we can actually improve the models to be less and less needy of reviews. And then we have the instructional designers to manage the ongoing AI updates. So this concept is a bit much on a paper or on a slide like this. So I would suggest that we go into the demo phase, and I hope the gods of the demo will be with me. Up. And this will explain the whole thing. I think much better that I could ever show on a slide. So I'm using a standard Rise 360 template course on marketing. And oops, this is what a standard course would look like, and arguably relatively well designed. Can you see that screen? Okay, so marketing fundamentals. Let me jump into the first part. So you see the course, nice banner. It's relatively slick, animations, a little bit of a context setting at the beginning, different fonts for people to kind of visually engage, full banner video, how nice. And then the lecture part with little animations that pop up, which is something that kind of state-of-the-art situation where you'd be like, oh, this is great, this engages people, even if neuroscience says that this is actually counterproductive because it makes people scroll through and not read. But this is kind of, if you want the lecture part, then I have to take some action. There's a little animation, boxes to read through, another animation, and then the marketing process, and then my accordions to, again, quote unquote, engage with the content. All of this to create this is relatively actually condensed, takes a ton of time. And the reality is, despite the fact that it is quote unquote well designed, if we look into the usage with students, if you go beyond the novelty effect, most of these animations and effects are actually not conducive to the students' learning, and it doesn't change much between a textbook and this. It's just content that you have to read. And if your brain is not there, or if you're, in my case, I've worked a lot with adult learners, if you're just 1,000 things going on in your life and kids are running around in the background trying to do a spaghetti battle, or not trying to, but effectively succeeding in a spaghetti battle, then it's not easy to learn with this. So I have now tried to figure out how we can use generative AI to just, as a first example, change this structure or this course in a way that we can make sure that the content, the updating of the content is not so heavy on the workload, but also at the same time is much more engaging to the student. Oh. Okay. So there are a few things that change here, and I will actually start by going into the content part. So here you remember there was this list of the different phases of the evolution of marketing. That is changing because the phases are evolving and we find out more information, courses become more inclusive, and so on and so forth. So it's a piece that I have to update and maintain up to date, even if it's a historic backdrop. Plus, on top of it, I can't engage with it. What if, instead of actually having this static content, I have a link to Google Learn About, which is highly curated by the instructor to follow the structure of what they had designed as a static content, but it effectively creates an interactive course that the students can engage with. And maybe quick show of hands, who has already used Google Learn About? Okay, so Google Learn About is currently an experiment, part of the Google Labs. And it's a group of instructional designers and education scientists with UX designers and engineers who effectively come up with a tool where you can ask anything and it will generate on the fly a course module for you. So here, for example, this is mirroring this list because I'm asking it to effectively create the same structure that I had in my course. It offers me more content to explore. And the interesting thing with Learn About is evidently it's like any chat. I can ask it something, or I can, because it's an interactive thing, click on any of these things. And then if you want, this interactive list pops up here on the left pane. And then it starts explaining each part in more detail. It brings in videos. There are learning these kind of learning activities that I can find. There's more information that I can find here. And if I'm in there, I can say, something like, I don't get how companies would get their products known at this time. Or I could ask some clarification on a specific term that I didn't understand or whatever. Ask all these questions that nobody wants to ask in class, and then effectively engage with the student, with this AI, and learn through it. Any questions about Learn About? You can just Google for Google Learn About. You'll find the link.
You did
Okay.
actually have a question. You
Oh
did
yeah, go
actually get
ahead.
a question. And you have some people on the waiting list. So you got eager people here that want to see it, but they haven't seen it yet. Wanted to know how you're ensuring accuracy and who would be doing the updating on this.
So the interesting perspective, that's a great question and the central question. The key here is this prompt, right? And this is what I prepared and send over to Learn About as a fixed content, if you want. Right, this is the click on here to see it and Learn About. And what you see here is effectively a short of the content that was the content in my lecture, my static content. And so the interesting perspective here is that instead of spending my time updating the content regularly, me as the faculty or subject matter expert with the help of the instructional designer, I can actually go and create that directive to the AI that does what I need it to do. Now, this is Learn About is an experiment at the moment, meaning it is relatively good, actually, honestly, to find good content online, but it's still online content, right? I'm talking to the people that are within that work group. It's very likely going to be integrated either in the general Gemini or into Agent Space, which is a new platform where effectively you then can connect it to any database you want. So you could connect it to research databases that are behind a paywall, your library, and so on and so forth. Right? So you could effectively tell it where do you source your information from. Learn About really is much more an user interface that uses methodologies and quality standards that are set by effectively learning designers, and yeah, more than the content itself, if you want.
Yeah.
So
And just
yeah,
as a follow-up, if
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah,
Just tell me when you want to move on. So Mary Beth was saying, and this is kind of, I think, related to your earlier response about how you structure that initial
yeah.
prompt. But I was asking how you're ensuring that, like, you're not sending students down rabbit holes that are like sending them away from the learning objectives. Um, if you had any thoughts around that piece.
Well, the interesting perspective is this is a relatively generic prompt. You can actually make the prompt in a way, and this is a little bit future tech because Learn About this is a little bit clunky to do it, but you can do it in a way where you are able to allow the AI to integrate more of who you are and make the content output more personal, right? So if we put it into agent space, which is connected to your Google Workspace, the AI technically knows who you are, what courses you're taking, what you're doing, what you understand, what you don't understand, and then can curate the output much better and effectively intelligently drive that discussion. Now, I'm seeing, to be very honest, a phase right now where we have this rabbit hole effect, and I see different discussions around this. I'm more of the camp that says, I think this is a phase where we're dealing with people who actually never had the chance to go down rabbit holes and who are discovering this possibility and are actually discovering the possibility of learning beyond what they have to learn. And yes, it might be a little bit of a time suck, but fundamentally it's not bad. And I think this is there's a learning curve on how to learn effectively, which we'll have to figure out with the students and how to guide them best so that they kind of self moderate a little bit. These tools will effectively allow you to go as fast as you want, but they can also be configured in a way that they ping you if you're going too far off the rails. Personally, I enjoy going off the rails if I have that opportunity. And this has mostly to do with the fact that I went through evidently an education myself and have had to design education that didn't allow students to follow their actual interests or topics that they might want to go deep into, and close gaps particularly. And I've seen people go down rabbit holes simply because they just had gaps that like didn't allow them to understand what the initial thing was all about. So the short answer to this, I'm of the belief that it's something we have to learn how to work with best. Younger generations who grow up with this, for them it will be almost organic. And if they are learning with AI from the get-go, there's a big chance that they won't have so many gaps as that require them to go down rabbit holes.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll just add, I have a few colleagues that are working kind of in a related space of this about the behavioral science side of it. And similarly, they're like, well, we can build in some guardrails to say, prompt them periodically, like, do you want to return back to the discussion about X or, whatever, in case they are getting a little too, but from what I've seen, to your point, the positive side of the increased agency outweighs, the time, maybe the little extra time that they diverted. But anyway, so.
The interesting thing for me is really this twofold perspective. And so the one perspective is the educator who is like, okay, the static content with this animation, I guarantee nobody will remember this. Like, it's just, why even put it on paper, right? So this is more engaging, more interactive, and allows me to ask questions and clarifying questions. And again, I can actually make it much more personal as soon as I give it more data about myself. The second thing is also then with the hat of the admin or the head of a department or a division who's like, I can't pay for updates every 6 months for my course. If I can have these core content pieces automatically generated evidently by a tool that sources good content, ideally connecting it to databases that are my content or that are vetted research and whatnot, how great, right? Especially think about the development and speed of technological development. I will be able to get access to research papers and news articles and information, white papers, whatnot, on what is actually currently happening through the auto-generated piece that I would never get through subject matter experts that are few and far like spread out across the country or across the globe, right? So this allows me really to be at the level of pertinence and being up to date that is beyond what I can deliver with any given subject matter expert. The beauty of this for me personally is that once I'm actually able to get that off the shoulders of faculty, for example, I can also start engaging them in things that are actually enrichment and enhancements also using AI. So let me just go through this. I have another element of this at the very end where I can, this was at the very end where it says these accordions, right? Which are the same things like sparse information, nobody learns anything. I can do the same thing and actually redirect to learn about with a guided prompt for it to effectively create an interactive list, not the static one for me to learn from. So beyond the automatic content generation now, how can I spend the time of the faculty wisely so that they can do things that go beyond the standard online course and make it even more engaging? So one thing I'm working on is from a neuroscientific scientific perspective, the idea that when you have an active schema in your brain, information can be learned instantaneously. The information you gets assimilated into that active mental framework, that schema. But many people don't have an existing schema really, or experience that they can attach the learning all of this content to. So one of the techniques that I started experimenting with is to actually prime students with a scenario and have them have an experience first. So instead of starting with the course content that just says Nikolai and his team had this experience, la-di-da context, I front load an interaction. So the interaction here, for example, first course, first module, congratulations, you finished your first week as a new marketing manager at Shocks, a rising company producing sneakers out of recycled materials and particularly popular with Gen Z customers. It's Friday and you just got off work. You decide to text your friend Emmy, who works in the accounting department and who asked that you let her know when you're off work. Your task, use what you already know about marketing to imagine what your first week was like and what you did. And then you click here and you talk to an agent. And again, this is relatively basic. You can imagine being able to put this into an iframe or integrate this, maybe put more graphics around it. But so here it opens an agent. So this is pre-configured and it's configured to have this role of Emmy. So I'm going to be like, hi, Emmy, just got off work. How are you doing? And then so Emmy answers, and this is using something that is character design to design these agents. So it's not a bot that responds like a bot. It's actually like you use for game design or for movie and TV. You actually design characters, relatively complex, that engage with you in a way that makes it seem much more authentic. So I'm good, finished wrangling the kids into bath. Congrats on surviving the first week. How you're feeling about the new gig. I'm so curious about what the actual day-to-day looks like. And so now I have to imagine this, and then I'm not sure yet. Just did a lot of onboarding. And so this agent is actually configured on the back end to be curious about that job of what it is to work in a marketing department, because that person is thinking about switching from accounting to marketing. And that scenario is something that you can actually co-design with a faculty, for example. The idea here is, and I took myself as the example, what would be an interesting scenario that would make the student experience or go through the experience of having to talk about what is marketing and what do you do. I want their brain to start thinking about everything they know about marketing and start creating a schema around what marketing is. And so I came up with this scenario and created this role. So there's this persona, you are Emmy, friend, you have a job, an accountant, you're intelligent, this is the context. Beyond congratulating the user for the first week of the job, your goal is to figure out what the day-to-day looks like as a marketing professional to determine whether you might like to do this type of work yourself. And then there's rules of the interaction and so on. The point here is what I did now as an instructor and instructional designer is I spent my time thinking about how can I help the student create a more consistent schema so that when they now hit this text, during your first week on the job, you heard about Nikolai and his team apparently just wrapped up a major project. For the last year, they've been working on a sneaker campaign and so on and so forth. This information now will actually hit an active schema because I will have spent several minutes talking about marketing and just like consolidating the stuff that I think you do as a marketer within a structure. And that's evidently not perfect, but it is a place where information can land, and so I can absorb it better. Any questions about that?
You got them. Now the chat's lighting up on me over here.
Okay.
So just to catch us up. So Katie says they've been using Blackboard's AI conversation role play for a similar pre-activity to Prime.
Yeah.
And I'm loving this because I'm from the gamification space. So any of this setting of immersion, I'm loving. Two other questions you had was Marcia was asking just for clarity about the whole process. So she could generate a course from published course objectives from her university and update it periodically. That's what that sounds like she's trying to summarize. Have you done that? She's asking. So if you want to tackle that first.
I will actually go into the experiment in a second and show
Okay,
how that
cool.
looks.
We'll come back to that one. I suspected, but we're priming. See, we're priming. And the other question from Maureen, which I knew somebody was going to ask, how would you measure student learning outcomes using these AI generated courses? So into the assessment discussion. And you probably are going to get into that when you do the other, or you can tackle it now.
No, actually, I mean, this is just general answer. That's what remains to be done. Right. So right now, what I'm sharing is literally the bleeding edge of technologically possible. I haven't even been able to test it in an actual scenario, right? So to your point, it would take the entire full rollout of an experiment and figure out how that works and how students function with it best.
Yeah. Thank you. See, we are living in the future today. So just
I mean, that's the point for me is what I do is experimenting at the edge and then actually showing, so this is technologically possible, because for many people, and I've seen this throughout my entire life, if you don't actually realize what you can do with tech, following theory that should work, you're not starting to think outside of the box as much.
Love it. Love it. Speaking my language today.
Yeah. So it's really to spawn the discussion and thinking more than anything else. Evidently, all of these things like literally are experimental. Even the tools are still in experimental stage. Just to quickly show a couple of other things. So I have my interactive lecture part here. I have the possibility also, this is an interesting part for me. So modern marketing, 21st century. This is the original text. And it just like goes through a few main points that, by the way, if I want students to memorize this quote better, I can quickly create a video that does that as well. And I didn't share with sound, so you didn't hear anything. But this is just a gimmick if you want. I can quickly add this content. Oops, wrong screen. That just is potentially more interesting for students to consume. And my dream is to actually have famous people like just Albert Einstein.
Marketing is creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large.
That's just a person saying it. You can animate it so that it sticks better with students. But one of the interesting parts that I found is this is the type of content that really students just skim through and don't remember anything. But why not take this content, create a little bit of a larger report, and then use Notebook LM to create a podcast of it, so that while I'm cooking or doing other things, I can actually listen to this podcast and have a debate, basically.
Welcome to the debate. Our source material confirms, well, really a profound evolution in business. Modern marketing has moved far, far beyond simple selling and promotion.
So you can, I don't know if you have used Notebook LM to create podcasts, but this is not the standard podcast here. This is actually a debate podcast, which is one of the options that they give. So it's a discussion where the two speakers take different points, and that allows you, while you're listening to it, to actually walk through the content in a much deeper way and understand the different perspectives you can have on the issue. It evidently takes 15 minutes, but the content sticks much more than if you basically just have this piece to read. The last thing I wanted to show is there was this learning activity that they had here. And I used AI to transform that learning activity into a interactive engagement. So what you see here is a much more elaborate activity where I'm going to engage with an agent who is taking the role of Aria Vex, who is the chief marketing officer of this company, where you are applying. And similar to the first example, effectively it opens a chat, and there you're able to engage with this person and go through this interview following all of these instructions. The thing is, again, designed in a way that it replaces the that learning activity that was passive before, that was at this space, and creates an interactive learning activity that has a beginning and an end, and it allows me effectively, in a nutshell, to fail and make mistakes in a safe environment and learn through this. So this is really the use of role play in two ways. The first one is to use it to generate and create schema so that everything I read and hear finds a place in my brain, and I can use the power of learning through assimilation and adoption. The second one is a training. It's a formative exercise where then I go through and I do something where I can apply learning already. I might actually spend a little bit more time on this than just browsing through the text as it was before, but I won't have to revise afterwards. I'm pretty sure, or I'm doing everything I can to enhance the learning in the moment so that every time I spend on it is actually time that I learn actively and not time that I just browse and make a book note that for the exam I have to come back and read it for real. Just because time is actually flying, let me answer that one question of, can you do, this is a way how you can transform an existing course. What actually has me even more excited, I don't say more excited, but this is very exciting, is to actually generate an entire course from scratch. So I'm using Google Opal, which is another experiment. So what this allows you to do is to effectively generate detailed, complex apps where, for example, you put in a lot of information and then it does several things. So it creates a persona, for example. Using that persona, it will, for example, create, you do a task here. It's not using that persona. Here we go. Using that persona, which is in this case a faculty, based on all this user content, information about what course they are teaching and so on. This faculty here will create in this part a list of all the topics that a student should know for the course. And then it goes and does research as a different persona to figure out what are unconventional competencies and skills that students need in this field, future-proof competencies, and then actually does a full research into the net, into the internet. You can use different models here. So for example, you can do a deep research so that it creates an entire report on what are current skills that companies are looking for. And then using this, it creates lists of the most important skills and competencies. And then with that, it updates the learning objectives. It creates a set of new learning objectives. And then it combines both to create my final set of learning objectives that includes all the best practices, future-proof, and so on and so forth. Creates a course outline. And then from that course outline, it starts creating up all the modules. So module 1, this is a standard module that it creates. Then it picks out the lecture part and transforms it into what you've seen with Learn About. Then it picks out all the learning activities and picks out the beginning, the context part, and builds a schema building learning activity. And then it picks out all the learning activities in the standard course module and transforms them into these interactive ones. It creates a top banner. It also technically creates a video. It's something that I've taken out, and then it creates a web page. And then it runs through all the modules. And for each module creates, based on the design you like, an entire website output where you have your content. And so this is a little bit clunky still. It basically gives you the prompt to copy into a chatbot so that you can interact with it. But so long story short, it creates the entire course. These are the Learn About prompts, video content, learning activities, again, with the scenario here to put in the AI, and then a group assignment. And right now, this is working with 2 modules. I'm actually chatting with the people from Google because my full-blown version that I have to produce all the 10 modules is not working very well because I'm effectively crashing Opal when I'm doing this. So again, all experimental stage.
Much like I think you crashed some people's brains today. It got really quiet at times in the chat. And I always know that's when people are like, oh my gosh, my head just exploded. Um, so just a note, I'm not going to kick anybody out right at the top of the hour, but if you need to leave, I will thank you for your time today, but we'll stay in here for a minute. We did have one other question. If you want to go back, loop around to that. Just to clarify, another clarification, when you were talking about the student going in and doing the role playing sort of conversation that you had set up with the character you had designed. Is this something they were asking, like, is this something the instructor would be able to see, or would you have them write a little reflection, or is this just an ungraded activity, how you are giving them a different way to consume the content? So if you have any other comments about that role playing piece.
I mean, for me, the interesting perspective with the role play, first and foremost, is that you're able to ensure or build the agent that you are engaging with to ensure that the student doesn't have gaps in their learning. And I think for me, that is the most powerful thing, or one of the most powerful things with AI, is that really, truly, almost every student at some point hasn't fully understood something, and it can actually start with the first module in a course or over years even, and just is dragging that knowledge gap that's just getting wider and wider through the course or even through their studies. Now, the interesting thing is if I systematically put interactive learning opportunities in there, such as a role play, and if the character is well designed, like the Emmy, for example, it's just like a fun, engaging thing to chat with, I give the student the opportunity to think deeper, discover what is not working, and configure the agent in a way that it actually pokes me and checks on Bloom's taxonomy, did I understand everything? Or just looking at the content and I tell it, the student really needs to come out of this discussion knowing this, so that you make sure they don't have, or they have the opportunity to close their gaps. And again, actually, for people that are starting to adopt the students mid-studies or mid-career or something, they might actually spend much, much more time on this and go down rabbit holes because they have so many gaps. I think the new generation of kids that are going to the likes of Alpha School or new institutions that are coming up and they're just used to learning with AI will have much less gaps in their knowledge and will ultimately have quite efficient interactions. I hope that addresses the question. But yeah.
I think you have, based on all the thank yous and how compelling people are finding this hour with you has been. We may have to have you come back. I don't know if that's up to you. I can't make you do that.
Happy to
but
chat.
you have
we didn't get to discuss much, so unfortunately.
I was going to say, I would highly encourage that you save the chat before we exit out of here. Erica Thornhill left you a absolutely lovely testimonial, I would say. I'll summarize for those who can't see the chat right now. But just for context, she is an asynchronous online 6 to 12 science teacher. And so she's talking about how, the difference she's seen in her students not engaging with material the way they did before AI. But cutting to the bottom, she's been really bothered by this, and she just wanted to thank you that you gave her some great ideas to help engage the students. So again, this is something that I particularly wanted to call that out because, again, we're kind of talking about courses, and I think we get caught in that sort of mindset that we're thinking about like just the adults, but no, we're talking about everybody. This is something that impacts everybody. So I'm just double checking. I think it's mostly just Not that that's not a good thing. I think it's mostly just thank yous.
Well, just to that point, and to everybody, please don't hesitate to reach out, find me on LinkedIn or somewhere. And there's much more to share. I'm happy to come back anytime, but it's really interesting. Particularly Google has, as a response, Google was always obsessed with accuracy, right, of their output of their search. And so generative AI has thrown them for a loop because there's so much uncertainty in it. So they've created this entire Google Labs space, which if you haven't discovered it, it's fantastic. So that's really the space where they have all their little experiments that are going on, or big experiments. And these tools are fascinating to work with, particularly Learn About. There's another Learn With, Learn How You Want. There's Opal. These tools are very exciting, and I'm happy to share my experiences with them. And I'm also happy to share experiences from my background, neuroscience, behavioral ecology, and so on how to actually design these characters. I've seen that in role play, on average, if you use the standard tools that are in your LMS, students will do 2, 3 back and forth because the responses they get are still the one of a bot. I'm able, with more anecdotal tests, but I'm able to have people chat for half an hour or something with a bot because it's a really engaging discussion, because the character is designed like an actual character that, if you want to talk neuroscience, it actually tricks your unconscious into believing you're really talking to a human.
Yep. Brain doesn't know the difference.
Yep.
I'm just geeking out over here because, again, I come from the game-based and gamification space. That's a big part of my work. But yeah, I think maybe that might be a good topic for us to talk about, you coming back and talking about. I do have one other question. Just because we've done a lot of work, a lot of webinars recently, and a lot of the requests I've gotten recently have been around the accessibility piece. And I know historically, LLMs have not been, let's just say they have not been that great on the accessibility side of things. Just because you have a really good inside track with the Google stuff. My sort of sideline feeling is that they're making a big effort to really lean into that. Is that an accurate statement, would you say?
A, yes, and B, it's also so much easier in terms of what the environment is, right? Because like Learn About, just look at it, it's relatively straightforward. It's a website. So to make that accessible is worlds easier than making a course accessible. And I'm pragmatic in a way that, yes, a human might can make things the most accessible if you want, right? But on average, they don't. We all know instructors, and we know the reality of what even good, well-designed courses looks like, and the incredible work it is to keep things up to date. And a lot of institutions are scrambling for WCAG compliance by April 24. It's coming. So
if I had to ask the question, as people are thinking about, all these new exciting things, like we still have to deal with reality.
Think about it. I calculated like the compliance, just to get your course into compliance, costs for a standard online course probably between $5,000 and $10,000, right? To get them WCAG compliant. If you apply or transform your online course into a generative course, and once the tools are ready, let's say Learn About is not an experiment anymore and so on, it's like a serious tool, at that point, that entire thing falls away, right? Because you have the vendor, that interface where they have done the effort to make it accessible, take care of this huge chunk of the course, right? And I didn't even go into, I know I had it in my presentation, I didn't even go into Google Vids. That's another experiment. You can actually generate entire voice over PowerPoint lectures on the fly, right? Automatically. Again, also in a way that is compliant versus anything that faculty would kind of build on their own.
I love it. I'll check and see. I don't see any more. I see lots of more thank yous and more great comments. But if anybody has, because we still got a lot of people hanging out still. If anybody has a question, and if you would like to unmute yourself and just speak your question, that's certainly open. Otherwise, what I'll do in a moment is I will end the recording, but not the meeting, because I know sometimes people have something they'd like to say off recording, shall we say? I don't say off camera because they're still on camera, but so if we have any other questions, otherwise I will just pause and end the recording, but you can stay and chat a little bit more with any of us. All right. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you so much for coming back. And I just knew when I invited you, I was like, I know this is going to be fantastic. And we'll talk more, because I definitely think we need to talk about you coming back and talk about the character development, because I think that is so key to a lot of things that are coming. So we will stop the recording now, but thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, thanks for the question.